really interesting thing to make you go, I've been listening to a conference with Dr. Johnny E. Mack from 1995, who has passed away in 2004, but this is before he passed away, obviously. And he's discussing alien abduction scenarios, and he mentioned that it's really interesting how people who are with an abduction researcher who takes the trauma approach of comforting the abductee and saying, you poor thing, these horrible monsters, they take your eggs, they rape you, they do these horrible scary things. The people there will 9 times out of 10 continue to perceive their experiences as negative and very invasive. And then he's mentioned that people with a psychologist approach who know how to carry the person through the trauma tend to evolve to where they stop perceiving the experience as negative, and they start saying, I've never felt so loved, and they start identifying with their abductors and feeling like it was a positive experience. Um, that is a very interesting phenomenon. I personally I'm a firm believer in what I've always called the power of perspective, because it's your perspective that's going to color your memories. It's your perspective that's going to color how you view things, which is why you're able to laugh at something that really sucked at the moment. Like, I don't know, there was this time I was driving along and I was backing out of this person's driveway, and they had this ditch that was so deep that it was like a chasm, and I backed into the ditch, and literally the whole car went sideways and ended up on its side in the ditch. Now at the time that was very frightening, but it's over now, and through my power of perspective I look back on it and I laugh. I backed into a chasm. That is the power of perspective. And considering that the both military abductors as well as the non-human abductors use perspective to control us. They fool us into thinking the people doing the doe hunt are zombies. They tell us, there's this one woman was talking about how she found a bunch of grays in her kitchen, and she's like, who are you? What are you doing in my kitchen? And one used a glamour to make himself look like her young nephew and told her that he was her nephew. This is all perspective based. So it only makes sense that if you're having your emotions comforted, soothed, whatever, guided by someone who is helping you. And this, by the way, cannot be helped. We are thinking, feeling, emotional beings, and emotions are the base of our power. Emotions are the base of our creativity. And unfortunately, that means emotions are also, as well, a strength and a weakness. That it would go back and color what we remember of these experiences. To be able to step outside of the emotions to get just the facts doesn't mean you're too left-brained. It, like many people think it does, it means that you've got a handle on your weakness, and you shouldn't throw your emotions out because you need them. You need them to control your power. You need them for your psychic ability. You need them. My particular emotions controlled by rage, for example. But if your emotions are coloring this, it's a wise thing to step back and look at what's really going on. I like to listen to stuff, and I decided that I was going to listen to a talk by Arizona Wilder, who is a former mind control slave, and it was like her second time she was speaking out, and she was like, and here's a picture, and over here's a picture, and then there was this picture that I drew when I was 5, and I'm like, okay, and this is a picture of an alien, and they weren't nice, and I met them in Area 52, and then I went to 54 and a half, and and she's like, okay, and then she said this.
This was a part of me that I called Keeper, and he was the keeper of the flames. And the flame being Illuminati flames. And this was a part of me that kept a lot of occult knowledge. And this was something created on a base. It was created on in a military base. It was created at China Lake Naval Weapons Station. So then these others started coming out.
Okay, so she's like talking about that, and she was basically saying she had drawn that in 1989 or something like that. Well, getting rid of this reptilian backhand dill. Okay, that's my unit. We aren't going to talk about that today. We're not going to talk about that either. There! Ta-da! I have the bearer of the eternal flame that I drew in 1988, and her statement is, ye who were, I don't know, Nikita was the name I was using back then, we return to you that which is yours. Now, I'm not saying that it's like, oh my god, the same programming, oh my gosh, you know, it's just, it was a really interesting coinky-dink because a lot of the stuff I drew back then turns out to have been linked. So and it just got me going, wow, that's pretty cool. So yeah, there's the bearer of the eternal flame. And I don't even remember what I was thinking when I drew that. Then we have a nice portrait of the pit. I wasn't really clear with the pit that has apparently been mentioned because Bartley and Eve both have spoken about the pit in interviews, and I know that the pit is not unique. It's basically a processing plant for body parts and junk. But this was my handler. His name was Gromatesh, and yes, he was a reptilian. Of course, back then I thought I was drawing a demon, but if you think about it, it's basically the same thing. And that's my representation of me. And there's another thing flying, another thing flying, and there's some sulfur gases right there. And so, yeah, it just kind of, her talking kind of got me, you know. And this one I drew recently for James Rink. I don't know if he's going to use it, but it's showing this event that happened. There was an explosion, and this is the uniform we were wearing. Sans, well, we didn't have pockets, and there was a hallway. There's an escape hatch right there, and then that's just because it's cool, and those of you can figure that part out. So I just thought it would be really cool. So yes, bearer. Oh, and that's how I used to perceive my home world. And I don't know what I was up with that. I don't know what was up with that. And there's Gromatesh again.